is Palm Springs, world-renowned desert resort. On this golden wasteland, whose timeless tranquility offers rest, relaxation, and the inspiration of the wild desert beauty against the village, which the world has come to look upon as the one resort in America which has everything. Now, what is this spell of enchantment? Makes a heart want to stay. Palm Springs is an inspiration.
Welcome to the edge of the world, as you know it. Human beings are capable of extraordinary things. Throughout our time on Earth, we've built astounding monuments, survived plagues and famines, and flourished in the face of impossible conditions. As a species, we are nothing if not the face of tenacity. But in our collective minds, these times of hardship have largely passed. The creature comforts of the modern era mean that for many of us, fears of calamity and collapse exist solely in the sensationalized headlines of our news feeds. We've created thriving communities where arguably none should exist. Take Palm Springs, California, a prime example of such dichotomy. In a place where temperatures routinely soar over 110 degrees Fahrenheit, a valley where even the most scrappy of foliage can barely cling to life on the sun-baked hills, we have not just homes, but golf courses, swimming pools, and resorts. Some may see it as paradise, others as hubris and folly. Regardless, like many such places, it is what it is, for better or for worse. But that's not where our story ends. It's merely the beginning. Because just an hour south of this artificial oasis exists something entirely different. It starts with a road. A long, desolate stretch of asphalt known as State Highway 111. It takes you to a strange and foreboding body of water known as the Salton Sea. The history of this area is sadly tragic. The lake was used for both irrigation and recreation well into the 1980s. However, mass pollution from industrial agriculture meant that by the 90s, it began to shrink and sour. The ever-increasing salinity of the water, combined with the toxic runoff from commercial farming, caused mass die-offs of fish and bird life, which devastated the local resort economy. By the late 90s, the area was all but abandoned, due in large part to the smell, which can best be described as sulfur and rotting fish. It's now said that the Salton Sea's fame has been earned as the greatest environmental disaster in California history. But, dear viewer, beauty is always in the eye of the beholder. At the center of this slow-motion catastrophe is the community of Bombay Beach. Originally created in the 1940s as a resort hub for the many recreational activities in the area, it was all but lost as the condition of the lake grew worse and worse. But a small and tenacious group of residents have stuck it out, refusing to leave in the face of some of the harshest conditions in the lower 48. Against all odds, Bombay Beach has become a far-flung haven for the weird. It's hard to imagine why you'd want to live in a place like this, but despite the odds, the current population sits north of 200. The heat is searing, the fumes from the sickly water almost unbearable, but for the people that have fallen in love with its unusual charms, it's home. And what a home they have. Abandoned structures are awash with spectacular graffiti. Strange sculptures erupt from unexpected places. Incomprehensible mantras and manifestos are scrawled on rocks and walls. The entire settlement is blanketed by a bizarre dystopian beauty that makes you keenly aware that one does not end up here by accident. For those that choose to live here, Bombay Beach is its own strange brand of paradise. It's easy to look at this jumbled assortment of not-so-broken homes and think that things couldn't possibly get any weirder than this. But hold that thought. Heading further down 111 will take you to the desolate outpost of Nyland, but that's just the entry point to our final destination. With the imposing Salvation Mountain as our North Star, we wander off into the desert brush, arriving finally at a place called Slab City. What exactly Slab City is difficult to define. You could call it a town, you could call it an illegal squatters camp. You could call it deeply depressing or breathtakingly beautiful. But as a complete antithesis to a place like Palm Springs, it is what it is, for better or for worse. Slab City gets its name from the enormous concrete slabs that once laid the foundation for a small Marine Corps installation called Camp Dunlap, which was used for training during World War II. After the camp was entirely dismantled in 1956, all that remained were the slabs. What started as a little-known spot to boondock your RV for free has become, over the years, a hermetic kingdom for any and all who desire to leave society at large behind. At the entrance stands Salvation Mountain, a colossal and flamboyant work of dedication and religious fervor. A Korean War veteran named Leonard Knight began work on the structure in 1984 and continued for an astonishing 27 years, living the entire time in a shack on the back of a broken-down truck. The artificial mountain was built entirely out of bricks, tires, car parts, straw, and any other large pieces of refuse Knight could get his hands on. Its message is one of unconditional love for all mankind, conveyed from a deeply Christian perspective. But above all else, it serves as a thunderous welcome to the wild world of the slabs. Driving to the other end of this anarchic commune takes us to another expression of just what this place is all about. Displayed haphazardly over the dry desert earth is an outlandish gallery of art and sculpture known as East Jesus. Originally founded by visionary artist Charles Stephen Russell, the collective describes itself as a refuge for artists, musicians, survivalists, and other wandering geniuses, dedicated to providing a working model of an improbable and improvised community at the edge of the world. And what an accurate descriptor that is. East Jesus is an artistic grotto of alternative thinking, strange, severe, and downright silly expressions of anything and everything. Political and religious symbolism, the macabre, the occult, the offensive, the downright strange, all is sacred here. As always, if you come here, be mindful and respectful of everyone and everything and donate what you can. That goes for Salvation Mountain as well. But needless to say, both places are fascinating reflections of just what the community here is all about. In between these two bastions of alternative thought sit the slabs themselves. Now, out of respect for the residents and their privacy, we limited our filming of the community proper, because there's no getting around the fact that this is an eye-opening place that challenges all notions of what many on the outside would consider acceptable living conditions. The people of Slab City live in what most Americans would view as complete chaos. Shacks and shanties are constructed out of whatever discarded materials can be cobbled together. Broken down cars and RVs sit as the centerpieces of makeshift tarpaulin tent structures. But the important thing to understand about the slabs is that, much like Bombay Beach, one does not come to reside here by accident. Existence here is harsh, resources are scarce, but despite it all, these brave souls have chosen this place as their home, forming their own tight-knit community where, arguably, none should exist. This life attracts a very particular kind of person, someone who is willing to relinquish many creature comforts in exchange for one thing: true and complete freedom. Because that's what you get here. The freedom to be entirely and honestly yourself. To be wholly unburdened by the judgment of others and the expectations of participating in quote-unquote normal society. It takes bravery, dedication, resourcefulness, and honesty to proudly live a truth this extreme, and that deserves the utmost respect. Personally, I identify with this sentiment. My connection to Slab City goes far, far deeper than that of a passing tourist. To illustrate this point, let's take a step back in time to meet my grandparents, Kate and Dave Scott. In the early 1990s, Slab City was much the same as it is today. Though less sprawling and not quite as entrenched, it was still a haven for counterculture snowbirds, RVers, and anyone wanting to live truly off-grid. My grandparents began coming here to avoid Colorado's harsh winters in the late 80s and finally decided to settle here full-time in a converted bus around 1997. Back then, one of the main attractions was Flea Market Street. The main road into the slabs filled up with all manner of trinket stands, some selling handmade gifts, some selling complete junk. My grandma Kate always thought she had an eye for unloved treasures, and both she and my grandpa ran a small table on Flea Market Street for many years. Being music lovers, they were always excited for the many bands and buskers who would show up as well, and my grandma, with her fancy Hi-8 camera, captured their years there in loving detail. This was back at a time when the Salton Sea was still something of an actual recreation area, and the formidable Salvation Mountain was still in its early years of construction. That's Leonard Knight, the aforementioned architect of the mountain, there on the left. Seeing this footage after we visited the slabs is fascinating to me. Despite some cosmetic differences, the core vibe of this community hasn't changed in 3 decades. My grandparents went there to live a lifestyle you really can't find anywhere else. They were free of all burden, able to live their life and sell their wares in a place they found beautiful with people they loved. My great-aunt Auntsie, to the best of our knowledge, still lives on the slabs all these years later, despite being well into her 90s by now. It would seem that, in spite of the near uninhabitable conditions of the entire region, those who are attracted to life here tend to stick around for as long as they can.
Being part of Slab City, I'm privileged and honored to be a part.
My father first took me to visit my grandparents in Slab City at the age of 10. And while I didn't fully grasp the context of everything I saw on that trip, what I did understand was something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. In complete defiance of expectations, everyone I've ever met there has been kind, friendly, and above all else, happy. Then and now, the people of Slab City and Bombay Beach live their lives to the fullest, despite all circumstances seeming to work against them. As I said earlier, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You could easily look at the old bus my grandparents lived in as questionable or even unsafe, but my grandpa lovingly referred to it as his palace, spending years customizing it to perfectly suit their wants and needs. He loved that bus and loved the lifestyle it afforded him. At the end of the day, it's not our place to question or judge what makes someone content. In fact, I'd argue that so long as you're not doing harm to others, the pursuit of happiness is entirely what you make it. For some, it's the quiet, cozy confines of a $1 million mansion in Palm Springs. For others, it's a graffiti-covered compound in Bombay Beach or a broken-down RV forever parked on the slabs. At the end of the day, there's no right answer. If you're happy, you're happy. That's the message that this strange and desolate place, perched at the edge of the world, gave me. And it's a message I will never forget.